Daniel was on the kitchen floor when I opened the laptop. His face had gone gray. One hand was pressed to his chest, the other reaching for me while our daughter Lily stood in the hallway crying so hard she could barely breathe. I had already called 911. I had already unlocked the front door for the paramedics. And while sirens got louder outside, Daniel grabbed my wrist and forced out 3 broken words. Insurance, laptop, now. I ran to his office with shaking hands, opened the silver laptop he never let out of his sight, and typed the password. He gasped between breaths. Our daughter's birthday. The screen came alive, his email opened. A cloud drive synced, and right there, in the center of the desktop, a hidden folder flashed for half a second before it tried to disappear. Plan B. I clicked it before I could think. Inside were 7 folders and 3 files. Custody, apartment lease, transfers, evidence, emergency script, a PDF called Temporary Removal Strategy, and a spreadsheet labeled Budget After Elena. For a second, I stopped hearing the sirens. My husband was being loaded into an ambulance and I was staring at a plan for life after me. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach drop. I opened evidence, thinking maybe there had to be some mistake. Maybe it was maybe it was somebody else's file. Instead, I found videos of me crying in the laundry room after a long day, me forgetting a pot on the stove, me staring at the wall with my tea in my hand. Every clip had a note beside it. Emotional instability, poor concentration, possible dissociation, useful if needed. Useful. Like I was a problem he had been organizing. Then the paramedic shouted from the door, "Ma'am, we need you with him." I slammed the laptop shut, but the words were already inside me. Budget after Elena. Temporary removal strategy. Useful if needed. I rode to the hospital with my husband's hand in mine and his secret plan in my chest. If you had met Daniel and me a month earlier, you would have said we were the couple people secretly hated a little. Not because we showed off. We didn't. We were the quiet kind. The kind who brought the same homemade potato salad to neighborhood barbecues every summer. The kind who finished each other's grocery lists. The kind who still reached for each other in parking lots without thinking. Daniel remembered every tiny thing. How I liked my coffee too hot to drink. How Lily refused socks with toe seams. How I couldn't sleep unless the closet door was fully shut. He had the kind of steady voice that made people trust him before he even finished a sentence. And I needed steady. I grew up in chaos. My mother disappeared for days at a time. My father left before I learned how to spell his last name. By 16, I knew how to hide grocery money in tampon boxes and smile at teachers so they wouldn't ask questions. So when Daniel came into my life with clean shirts, gentle hands, and the talent for making everything feel safe, I loved him with the full hunger of a woman who had spent half her life surviving storms. Then Lily came, and whatever was left of my broken pieces started to feel almost whole. She was my older sister's daughter, though I never called her that out loud. My sister Ava died 3 years ago, just 6 months after Lily turned 4. An overdose in a motel bathroom 2 counties away. She had loved hard, failed hard, and left behind the little girl she used to swear she'd get clean for. Daniel held me through the funeral. Daniel filled out emergency school forms. Daniel sat on the floor and built blanket forts when Lily wouldn't sleep because she kept asking if heaven had cartoons. When we got temporary guardianship, he told me, "She's ours now, not by blood, by choice." I believed that man with everything in me, and then everything changed. At first, the changes were so small I felt stupid for noticing. Daniel started taking calls outside. He used to leave his phone face down only when he was sleeping. Then he started keeping it in his pocket even in the shower. He put a password on the office door because of work files. He told me his firm was taking on a complicated hotel project and he'd be home late just for a few weeks. I tried to be understanding. Lily had started first grade. I was juggling bookkeeping clients from home. Life got crowded, marriage shifts. Adults get tired, that's what I told myself. But then he started saying strange things. "You seem forgetful lately. You already told me that story. Did you take something for your nerves?" The first time he said it, I laughed. The second time, I got defensive. By the fifth or sixth time, I started wondering if something was wrong with me, because I had been off. I was exhausted all the time. I'd walk into a room and forget why. One night I cried because Lily spilled juice, then hated myself for crying over something so small. Another afternoon, I picked Lily up 10 minutes late from school and swore the whole drive home had disappeared from my mind like a page torn from a book. Daniel had wrapped both hands around my face that night and said, so softly it hurt, "I'm worried about you." I thought that was love. Now I know some people learn your weaknesses just to weaponize them later. 3 days after the hospital scare, Daniel came home. The doctor said it wasn't a heart attack. Severe panic episode, dehydration, stress, and what they called an alarming lack of sleep. He laughed it off in front of everyone. Told nurses he was overworked and stubborn. Told me he was embarrassed. Told Lily that Daddy's body had just hit the wrong button. She climbed into his lap that night and pressed her ear to his chest like she was making sure it still worked. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched them. If I hadn't seen that folder, that moment would have destroyed me with tenderness. Instead, it terrified me. Because Daniel looked at me over Lily's head, and for just a second, his smile changed. It got smaller. Sharper. Like he was checking whether I knew. I smiled back anyway. That was the moment my marriage became an undercover job. I didn't confront him, not then. I needed to know more first. I needed to understand whether Plan B meant divorce, custody, some twisted insurance strategy, or something even worse. So I pretended. I kissed his cheek. I reheated soup. I asked about discharge papers. At night, I lay still beside him and listened to his breathing while my mind ran in circles so fast I thought I might throw up. On the second night, I slipped out of bed and tried the laptop again. The folder was gone. Not deleted. Hidden better. He had changed the password too. When I came back into the bedroom, Daniel was awake. Not fully. Just enough to murmur, "You okay?" I said yes too quickly. He reached for my wrist in the dark. "You've been anxious lately." There was concern in his voice. There was also a warning. What I saw next made the fear real. The following afternoon, while I was folding towels, Lily wandered in holding one of Daniel's old receipts. She had been making store in the living room, lining up random paper scraps and toy food on the coffee table. "Mommy," she asked, "if I have 2 bedrooms, can I paint one purple?" I stared at her. "What do you mean 2 bedrooms?" She shrugged. "Daddy said some kids do that when things change." "What things?" He said not to worry because he always has a plan. I folded the same towel 3 times before I realized my hands were shaking. That night I asked Daniel where Lily had gotten the idea of 2 bedrooms. He didn't blink. I told her some kids live in 2 homes after divorce because one of her classmates mentioned it, he said. She asked questions. "Why would you talk to our daughter about divorce?" He leaned back in his chair like I was overreacting. "Because kids hear things. It's healthy to answer calmly." Our daughter. Divorce. The words sat on the table between us like knives. "But we're not getting divorced," I said. He looked at me for a beat too long. "Of course not," he said, and then he smiled, but that smile felt rehearsed. Over the next week, things got worse in quiet ways that made me feel trapped inside a glass box. A camera appeared above the back door. Then one in the hallway. Daniel said package thefts were up in the neighborhood. When I asked why the hallway needed one, he said, "Safety is never a bad investment." A new lock went on the medicine cabinet. He moved our savings into a different account for better rates, then forgot to tell me the password. He started texting Lily's teacher directly instead of looping me in. He printed documents late at night and shredded them before morning. Once I came into the kitchen and he snapped his laptop shut so fast he almost caught his fingers. When I asked what he was working on, he said, "Backup plans." He actually said the words. I laughed, but it came out thin. "For what?" "For life," he said. "You never know what can happen." Then he kissed my forehead like that answer should comfort me. It didn't. I needed someone outside the marriage, someone who knew me before Daniel. Someone who would tell me if I was imagining all of it. So I called Tessa. Tessa had been my best friend since community college. Loud, messy, impossible to intimidate. She was the kind of woman who'd show up with wine, Thai food, and a list of every bad decision you'd ever made, but she'd defend you to death against anybody else. She worked as a pharmacy tech, knew everybody's business, and had a talent for spotting lies before most people finished telling them. When I told her I thought Daniel was hiding something, she went weirdly quiet. Maybe don't jump to the worst conclusion yet, she said. I sat up straight. Why are you saying that? Because stress makes people do strange things. Is that what he told you? There was a pause. Tessa. She sighed. He called me 2 weeks ago. He was worried about you. The room went cold around me. Worried? How? He said you'd been forgetting things, crying a lot, that maybe the anniversary of Ava's death had hit you harder than you admitted, and you believed him? I believed he sounded scared. I couldn't breathe right for a second. Have you talked to him again? Another pause. Too long. Yes, she said. That wasn't the worst part. I asked her where. At a coffee shop near my work, she said. Just you two? Silence. There was a lawyer there too. I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard against the floor. A lawyer? Elena, please listen to me. No, you listen. My husband is secretly meeting a lawyer and my best friend, and you didn't think to tell me? He said he was asking about options if you needed help. Help with what? She lowered her voice. He thinks you're not doing well. I hung up on her before she finished. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and laughed the kind of laugh that comes right before somebody breaks. Because suddenly the folder made sense in the worst possible way. My husband wasn't planning to leave me because he stopped loving me. He was building a case. That night, Daniel came home with flowers. Yellow roses. My least favorite. He knew that too. Lily ran to him. He scooped her up and spun her in a circle while I stood there staring at a man who might have been planning to erase me from my own life. At dinner, he asked about my day in that same calm voice. He refilled my water. He told Lily he'd help with her class project. If I hadn't known about the folder, I would have said he was perfect. Maybe that was the point. After Lily went to bed, I followed him into the kitchen. Did you meet Tessa and a lawyer? I asked. He froze for half a second, then turned slowly. Yes. Just yes. My heart started pounding. Why? He leaned against the counter, folding his arms. I didn't want to upset you. So you met a lawyer behind my back instead? Elena, lower your voice. Answer me. He looked tired, patient, controlled. It made me want to scream. I was worried, he said, about your emotional state. I wanted to know what support looks like if things get worse. Worse, I said. What exactly do you think is happening to me? He didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch until I felt myself shrinking inside it. That's what scares me, he said finally. You really don't see it. If he had slapped me, it would have hurt less. I slept maybe 2 hours that night. At 3 a.m, I got up and checked the trash in his office. The shredder bag was empty, but tucked behind it was an envelope from a law office downtown. I took a picture with my phone. Family law, emergency hearings, custody petitions. I put it back exactly where I found it. The next day, I drove past the office address on the envelope. Daniel's car was there. So was Tessa's. I parked half a block away and watched through the glass as the three of them sat at a table. Daniel, Tessa, and a woman in a navy suit. At one point, the lawyer slid a paper toward Tessa, and Tessa shook her head. Daniel said something. Tessa rubbed her forehead. Then, like a knife straight through me, Daniel reached across the table and touched her hand. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my coffee to go cold, long enough to build 10 different versions of betrayal inside my mind. Affair. Custody. Both. I drove home blind with rage, and then something happened that made me question my own mind again. That evening after dinner, Daniel made tea, chamomile for me, mint for him. He did it almost every night. It had become one of those boring little marriage rituals you stop noticing because it feels like part of the furniture. I drank mine while helping Lily color a poster board for school. About 20 minutes later, my head got heavy. My hands tingled. The room felt farther away than it should have. The next thing I remember clearly, I was in bed. Morning light, head pounding, mouth dry. Daniel stood in the doorway with his jaw tight and said, "You scared Lily last night." I pushed myself up too fast. "What?" "You started crying. Then yelling at me for no reason." She heard. "I didn't yell at anyone." "Yes, you did." I searched my memory and found nothing but static. "You must have blacked out," he said quietly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about." No one had ever looked at me with pity and judgment at the same time before. It is a terrible thing when the person who knows your history uses it to make you distrust your own brain. But I still didn't know the worst of it. The next few days felt like walking through a house where the walls were slowly moving in. Daniel became almost unbearably gentle. He texted me reminders during the day. "Did you eat lunch? Remember Lily's pickup is at 3. Proud of you for resting." It was the language of support, but it landed like surveillance. Once, when I came home from the grocery store, I found him standing in the living room watching footage from the hallway camera. "Just checking the motion alerts," he said. On the screen was me, walking in, setting my keys down, looking tired. He closed the app when he realized I saw it. Lily changed too. She got clingier with him, quieter with me. Not because she loved me less. Because children can feel tension before adults admit it exists. Twice I caught her watching me with worried eyes, like she was trying to decide whether I was safe to approach. That nearly killed me. Then, on Friday afternoon, the school called. Lily hadn't been picked up. I was already in the car, 5 minutes away from dismissal. I told the secretary I was coming. She hesitated and said, "Mrs. Hart, your husband already signed her out." My hands slipped on the steering wheel. He hadn't texted. He hadn't called. He had just taken her. When I got home, his car was in the driveway. Lily was on the couch eating apple slices. Daniel was in the kitchen chopping vegetables like nothing had happened. "Why did you take her without telling me?" I asked. He looked genuinely confused. "You seemed overwhelmed this morning." "I was helping." "I was not overwhelmed." He set the knife down very carefully. "You forgot the permission slip, Elena. You left the stove on yesterday. You've been sleeping in the middle of the day. I'm trying to keep things stable." Lily went completely still on the couch. I lowered my voice because our daughter was right there. "Stop saying things about me like I'm not standing in front of you." He stepped closer. "Then help me understand what's happening to you." That line. Calm, practiced. Designed to make any reaction from me look like proof. I almost gave it to him, but something inside me finally turned hard. I smiled. "You're right," I said. "Maybe I need help." His shoulders loosened, only for a second. That second told me everything. What I did next changed the whole story. I called Tessa and told her to meet me at the 24-hour diner by the highway. No excuses, no delays. She arrived in scrubs, hair tied up, face pale, looking like she already knew this was going to hurt. I didn't sit down. "Tell me everything." She stared at the coffee pot in her hands. "Daniel came to me because of the meds." "What meds?" He asked general questions at first, about panic attacks, dissociation, memory gaps. Then he asked whether certain anti-anxiety medications could make someone sleepy or emotional if they weren't used to them. Ice slid down my spine. "Why would he ask you that?" "He said you'd found an old prescription and started taking it again because you were ashamed to tell him you weren't coping." "I never said that. I know that now." I sat down slowly. "What lawyer papers were you signing?" Her eyes filled with tears. "A witness statement. I didn't sign it." He wanted me to say I'd seen you spiraling, that I was concerned for Lily. I felt sick. "And the hand touch? What? At the office?" He touched your hand. Tessa actually laughed, once, without humor. Because I told him he was out of his mind and he was trying to calm me down. The air left my lungs in a rush. No affair. This was somehow worse. But that still wasn't the biggest twist, Tessa said. She reached into her bag and slid a printout across the table. It was a pharmacy refill notice with my name on it. Clonazepam. Refilled twice in the past month. I stared at it so long the letters blurred. I never filled this, I whispered. I know. I checked after I started feeling weird about the questions he was asking. The refill request came through a telehealth doctor. Online consult. Prescriptions sent to a branch near Daniel's office, not your regular pharmacy. I looked up. Can he do that? Not legally. I thought about the tea. The missing time, the heavy head, the way every worst episode happened at home after he'd handed me a mug with a little smile. My skin crawled. He's drugging me, I said, and even then the words sounded impossible. Tessa swallowed hard. I think he's been dosing you just enough to make you foggy, emotional, unreliable, enough for video clips, enough to build a story. For a long time, neither of us said anything. I had thought I was uncovering betrayal. I was actually uncovering construction. My husband wasn't reacting to my breakdown, he was building it. What I learned next made Plan B even darker. Tessa had one more thing. I wasn't going to tell you until I was sure, she said, but Daniel's firm is in trouble. I frowned. What do you mean? Ryan's cousin does commercial insurance. He mentioned Daniel's company missed payments on their liability coverage. Twice. Then Daniel asked me weird questions about guardianship accounts and minors' trusts. The diner suddenly felt too small. Lily had a trust, not from us. From Avia's wrongful death settlement. It wasn't massive, but it was real money set aside for Lily's future after the motel owners and suppliers settled with the estate. We couldn't touch it without court approval. We'd always talked about leaving it alone for college, therapy, whatever kind of life might help her heal from the beginning she got handed. Daniel knew that. You think this is about Lily's money? I said. Tessa's mouth tightened. I think it's about control. And if money is attached to control, then yes. I bent over, elbows on the table, palms pressed to my eyes until bright colors burst behind them. Everything fit now. The lawyer, the cameras, the scripts, the concern. The way he kept moving me out of decisions involving Lily. This wasn't panic, it wasn't fear, it wasn't a husband watching his wife fall apart. It was a man preparing to remove an obstacle. And then everything got worse. When I got home that night, the front door key didn't work. At first I thought I was using the wrong one. Then the porch light clicked on and Daniel opened the door from inside. He looked almost apologetic. I changed the lock, he said. I heard my own voice come out flat. Why? You lost your keys twice this week. I did not. You found them both times in strange places, Elena. I stepped closer, opened the door. He looked over my shoulder like he was checking whether neighbors were watching. Lily's asleep. Don't make a scene. Scene. The word lit something feral in me. This is my house. He lowered his voice. Then act like someone who can safely be in it. I shoved past him so hard his shoulder hit the frame. He didn't stop me. He just watched. Calm, cold, almost interested, like he was waiting to see what I'd do next. That's when I noticed the camera in the foyer angled directly toward us. He wasn't just provoking me. He was recording. I turned and walked upstairs without another word, because I finally understood the game. Every tear was evidence. Every raised voice was a clip. Every crack in my composure was a line in a file. But that night, I made my own plan. The next morning, I searched the house. Not like a wife, like a witness. I checked the medicine cabinet. Locked. I checked trash bags, kitchen drawers, laundry baskets, his office. I found nothing until I remembered Lily's stuffed bunny. The one Daniel bought after Ava died because Lily said she needed something to hold her bad dreams down. It had a tiny camera inside supposedly to monitor her room when she was having night terrors. Daniel had shown it to me when he installed it, saying it would help us make sure she stayed in bed. I hadn't thought about it in months. I opened the app. Most of the footage was boring: Lily sleeping, Lily reading, Lily talking to stuffed animals. Then I noticed one clip that had a strange angle and extra sound. The bunny must have been moved. I opened it. The camera was pointed through Lily's half-open bedroom door into the hallway and part of the kitchen. I watched Daniel walk into frame carrying 2 mugs. He set mine on the counter, reached into his pocket, crushed something between 2 spoons, and stirred it into the tea. My whole body went numb. Then his phone rang. I will never forget his voice on that call. "Yes," he said. "I know the hearing risk." Pause. "No, she's getting worse. I have enough footage now." Another pause. "Once temporary custody is in place, the trust issue gets easier." He laughed softly. "Plan A was treatment. Plan B is cleaner. Cleaner point bolts was keener." I dropped the phone so hard it bounced on the bed. I think I made a sound then. Something wounded, an animal, and too deep to be called crying. Because Lily came to the door, hair messy from sleep, rubbing one eye. "Mommy?" I pulled her into my arms so fast she squeaked. "What's wrong?" she whispered. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to tell her Daddy wasn't Daddy. Not really. Not anymore. I wanted to burn the whole world down. Instead, I kissed the top of her head and said, "Nothing, baby. I just needed a hug." But I did know what was coming next. War. Tessa came over within 20 minutes. We copied the bunny cam footage to 3 places. Her phone. My phone. A cloud account Daniel didn't know existed. Then she drove me to the pharmacy branch near Daniel's office, where a manager she knew personally confirmed that my prescription had been picked up by a man using my date of birth and address. There was security footage, grainy but clear enough. Daniel. He had signed my name. Fraud. Drugging. Custody scheme. Every new piece of proof made me less shaky and more dangerous. But he still had one advantage. He moved first. By noon, I got an email from a family court clerk. Daniel had filed for an emergency custody order, citing concerns about my mental stability and possible substance misuse. Attached were screenshots from his folder. Me crying. Me slurring. Me asleep on the couch in daylight. Me forgetting Lily's lunch once and driving it to school late. It looked bad. Out of context, it looked devastating. Hearing scheduled next morning. I felt the room tilt. "He's trying to hit before you can prepare," Tessa said. I laughed once, bitter and sharp. He already prepared, for weeks. That afternoon, Daniel came home early. He found me in the kitchen, sitting still, Lily at the table, drawing stars on printer paper. He took one look at my face and knew. Not everything. But enough. "You went through my things," he said. It wasn't a question. I looked at him and saw for the first time the full emptiness behind his calm. He didn't seem guilty. He seemed inconvenienced. "You drubbed me," I said. Lily's crayon stopped moving. Daniel glanced at her, then back at me. This is exactly why I didn't want her hearing these conversations. "Don't you dare use that voice on me." He set his briefcase down slowly. "You are not thinking clearly." I stood. "You forged prescriptions. You recorded me. You tried to make me look crazy so you could take Lily." He didn't deny it right away. That was the most chilling part. Finally, he said, "I tried to help you first." My whole body went cold. "Help me?" "Yes. Rest. Therapy. Structure. You refused to admit you were struggling. So you poisoned me." His jaw flexed. "I gave you something mild to sleep." I actually laughed. "You are insane." "No," he said. "I'm practical." Then he looked at Lily and added, "Go upstairs, sweetheart." She didn't move. Her little face had gone white. "Lily," I said softly, "go to your room and call Tessa if you need anything, okay?" She ran. Then it was just us. He stepped closer. You think love is enough, Elena? It isn't. Stability matters. Planning matters. I won't let your chaos ruin her future. My hands curled into fists. My chaos? You grew up in it. Ava died in it. You carry it into every room and call it healing. There are some sentences that split your life into before and after. That was one of them. I stared at the man who once held me through panic attacks and funerals and midnight grief, and I understood something terrible. He had not loved me despite my wounds. He had studied them. And Lily's trust? I asked. That part of stability too? Something flickered in his eyes. There it was. The greed. The crack. My firm is under pressure, he said. Temporary. I can manage it. With my daughter's money. With proper control, it could protect all of us. I took a step back like he was contagious. He exhaled slowly. You've always been emotional. That's why you can't see the bigger picture. No. That wasn't even the worst thing he said. He looked me dead in the face and said, if you cooperate tomorrow, you might still get weekends. I saw red, not because he threatened me, because he said it like it was generous. I wanted to scream, throw something, tear his lying mouth apart with my bare hands. Instead, I did the one thing he had clearly never imagined I'd be capable of. I smiled. You should have deleted the bunny cam, I said. His face changed. For the first time, Daniel looked afraid. The night before the hearing, no one slept. Tessa stayed with us. She made copies, called a lawyer she knew through a customer, and sat at my kitchen table with her shoes still on like she was ready to kick down a door if needed. Willie crawled into my lap around midnight and whispered, Is Daddy mad at you? I held her so tightly I worried I might hurt her. Daddy made some very bad choices, I said carefully. But none of this is your fault. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going away? That question shredded me. I tipped her chin up until she looked at me. No. Listen to me. I am not leaving you. Ever. She searched my face like she needed to decide whether to trust that promise. Then she nodded. After she fell asleep beside me on the couch, Tessa lowered her voice and said, There's one more thing. I thought I had no room left for more. But she slid a printed email chain across the coffee table. A mutual friend from Daniel's office had forwarded it. Internal messages. Late fees. Overdue payroll taxes. A loan default notice. Daniel's firm wasn't under pressure. It was collapsing. And in one message to the lawyer he had written, If I secure primary custody, I can petition for trustee oversight on the minor settlement, enough to bridge 6 months. There it was in black and white. Not fear. Not concern. Not a husband trying to protect a child. A financial strategy built on destroying me. I didn't cry then. I had run out of tears sometime around the forged prescription. In the morning, I wore the blue dress Daniel once said made me look trustworthy. I almost laughed at that. Maybe he'd been teaching me the rules all along. The courthouse smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Daniel stood in the hallway with his lawyer, perfectly pressed, perfectly calm. If you didn't know what he'd done, you would have thought he was there to volunteer at a fundraiser. He glanced at Lily, then at me, then at Tessa. Still doing damage control? He asked softly. Tessa stepped in front of me before I could answer. Still poisoning your wife? His lawyer stiffened. Daniel didn't react. He just gave Tessa a thin smile. Be careful with accusations you can't prove. That was the moment I knew he still thought he could win. Inside the courtroom, he spoke first. Of course he did. He talked about concern, about my difficult family history, about how much he loved me, how long he had tried to help me privately, how heartbreaking it was to involve the court, but how Lily's well-being had to come first. His lawyer submitted clips, photos, notes, a timeline of my decline. On paper, it looked neat and tragic. If I hadn't lived it, I might have believed him too. Then my lawyer stood. She was not flashy. She didn't need to be. She introduced the pharmacy records, the forged prescription, the security footage of Daniel picking up medication in my name. Then she introduced the bunny cam video. The room changed the second the clip started playing. There he was. My husband, calm as ever, crushing pills into my tea. Then his voice on the phone. Once temporary custody is in place, the trust issue gets easier. Silence swallowed the whole courtroom. Even Daniel's lawyer looked like she had stopped breathing. My attorney didn't rush. She let the clip finish. Then she submitted the email about using oversight on Lily's settlement to bridge his business debt. Then Tessa took the stand and testified that Daniel had approached her for symptom information and a witness statement based on lies. She admitted her delay. She admitted her mistake. She cried halfway through and kept talking anyway. That took more courage than people realize. Daniel finally stood up, but he didn't look calm anymore. "This is taken out of context," he said. The judge looked at him over her glasses. "Which part? The fraud, the drugging, or the financial motive?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And then, in the strangest way, the climax wasn't loud.